Welcome to the Pinch Masterclass series. I'm Cameron Taylor, and today I'm going to be running you through everything that you need to understand about payment plans, specifically the invoice breakdown payment plan type, and how you can either invite your clients to flexible payment plans or provide them with the ability to opt into these payment plans. I'm going to be covering three specific areas of the system here in terms of the functionality of the breakdown plans feature. We're going to be talking about deposit plans and how you can set up partial or milestone payments. Then we're going to be using two areas specifically where we're going to be talking about the actual breakdown plan function to create a repeat debit cycle to pay off an invoice over time. And then I'm going to also explain to you some opt-in functionality that allows you to build a payment plan so that your customers can see this when they click into an invoice payment link page, and then from there they'll be able to actually self-enroll into this payment plan. So let's get started. We're going to start by talking about deposit plans. So this is how we can support partial payments, deposits, and milestone payments. So what this looks like is, from within your Pinch dashboard, you're going to head over here to the plans and subscriptions feature, which we have covered in a separate video. What we're going to do is we're going to click the Add Payment Plan button. And we're specifically today talking about this feature and this feature only, called the Breakdown and Existing Invoice Payment Plan type. This does exactly what it says. It'll take your existing invoice and chop it up into any number of singular or multiple payments until it's either partially or completely paid off. So the first example that we're going to do is a breakdown plan for a partial amount. So we would call this a deposit or a milestone payment. All you need to do when configuring an invoice breakdown plan is create an internal name and a display name that gets shown to your customer. It's your choice whether or not you include a terms link. You need to set the start date. So this is when you want the actual payment plan to activate, and most importantly, when the actual first debit of the payment plan will occur. This most commonly gets left as upon activation, because when your customer activates the payment plan, will start the debit dates. And then the only component that you need to configure in the context of a partial payment or milestone payment or deposit payment is using the fixed payment type. So this is a single fixed debit for the chosen amount or percentage. So what this means is when you click this button, you can actually specify an amount that you want to debit someone. So this is really good if you have a consistent amount that you're charging clients for their setup fee or a milestone payment towards starting a project. For example, if you're a digital marketer or content agency, or you're doing an install for a job and you need to take a certain amount of funds up front, you can specify a specific amount. And whether or not the invoice is $1,000 or $10,000, it will take $500 in a single payment, right? So that's option one. Option two, and what is more commonly used, is actually percentages, because this allows this payment plan to then be used on any invoice of any size, right? So the example that I'm going to configure here is actually a 50% payment. So we would call this like a half payment. So I'm going to call this payment plan a pay half now, right? And this payment plan that I am configuring is going to take 50% of the value of the invoice immediately. No repeating. It's just going to take that amount of funds straight away, right? You can specify to offset this by a number of days after the payment plan is activated. And I'll talk a little bit about this in a second. But all you need to do to complete the activation of this payment plan is hit create. From here, once you've created your payment plan, it's pretty simple to invite a customer to a payment plan. All you need to do is go and find the invoice that you would like to enroll into this breakdown plan. So in this case, I'm going to head to the payments tab, but alternatively, you can head to the customer specifically and actually look in their record for an appropriate invoice. In this case, I'm going to head to Messiah Brooks, click onto their invoice, and from here, you'll see the payment plan option. All you need to do is click the choose payment plan, select the payment plan that you want to enroll them to, in this case, the pay half now, which we just configured, and hit create. You'll notice here that this blue box tells you, because this customer doesn't already have a pre-approval, we will need to send them an email inviting them to this subscription. In the case that you are enrolling a customer into a invoice breakdown plan and they are already on a pre-approval, this dialog box will not show, and instead you will be able to specify the start date, and the payment plan will automatically enroll and activate and start debiting the client on that start date because they have already given you the authorization of payment via the pre-approval. In this case, though, we're just going to hit create, and from here, it's going to activate that payment plan and put it into a pending state. This means now we've sent that email to the customer and we are waiting for them to approve and activate the payment plan. Once they've activated the payment plan, based on the configuration of this specific payment plan, which is designed to immediately charge them this amount, you will be able to see that come the 27th, which is today, if the client was to activate this today or tomorrow or the following day, it will immediately debit this amount, right? So quite simple, quite straightforward for deposit amounts or milestones. Just as an extension to this that's worth noting is you can actually configure these to have multiple stages. So you can build out your invoice breakdown plan, you name the plan, and then you can actually add a series of fixed debits. So for example, you might initially be taking 25% of the value of the invoice straight away, but then you are also expecting to charge the client the remaining 75%, so the remaining total of the invoice 3 months later. You can also configure this, right? And this will create that type of payment plan, 25 upfront, 75% later. So you can see the details of this breakdown here. That's everything that you need to know about deposit plans and milestone plans. So let's move on to the next area, which is a more conventional payment plan, which is designed to fully pay off the invoice over a set period of time. The extension to this that I'll be covering is the fact that we do have functionality to allow you to configure your payment plans so that your customers can choose to opt into them without needing to ask or request that from you. So heading back into the system, we're going to head over here to the plans and subscriptions section again. We're going to hit add payment plan, and we're going to select invoice breakdown plan. We're going to start by naming our plan. So I'm going to call this a pay in 9 fortnightly. So the assumption here is that I am going to create a payment plan now that is going to be 9 payments that happen every fortnight. When configuring this payment plan, if you just want this payment plan to be invitation only, you need to avoid selecting this checkbox here, which I'll cover in a moment. So please avoid that if you don't want this to be an option for your customers to enroll into, and instead you want to control the ability to invite them. All you need to do here to set up the debit cycle for the invoice breakdown plan is to set a recurring payment schedule, right? Multiple repeating debits for the amount or percentage chosen, scheduled on the frequency you set in days, months, or years. So click add recurring debit, and you need to select from one of these 3 boxes. You either set an amount that you want to repeat, a percentage that you want to repeat, or a set number of payments that you want to chop the whole invoice up into. So in this case here, I want to chop my invoice up into 9 payments. So I'm going to put the number 9. I want the payment plan to start immediately and debit straight away. And then I want the payments to repeat every 14 days. That's it. I've now completed my invoice breakdown plan for pay in 9 fortnightly. And the same logic applies of inviting this for a client. So I'm going to go and find an invoice. In this case, I'm going to click into the customer and go from the customer's view. I'm going to scroll all the way down here to outstanding payments. I'm going to select an appropriate invoice, and I'm going to choose my payment plan. Pay in 9 fortnightly, and I'm going to enroll them. I'll quickly show you what the flow looks like if you were to use a client who already has a pre-approval. So in this case here, I'm going to go to Garrison's record, who has an active pre-approval, which we can see here. Just be aware that if your client does have a limited pre-approval, this does not apply to subscription payments. They will ignore this limit and will debit based on the subscription information. So you can have them set independently. In this case, I'm going to go and find an eligible invoice for Garrison. So in this case, I'm going to grab this $800 invoice. I'm going to enroll it into a payment plan, the same one. But you can see here, I'm actually able to specify when I want this payment plan to start, because I already have a payment method for the client. So I'm going to hit create payment plan, and that will immediately activate that payment plan with the payment method that they've already given me on pre-approval. And you can see here that this has already been activated. The client will receive an email saying that the payment plan has been activated on their behalf. And you can see here that the first debit date is the 20th, which is what I selected. So that's that specific flow. Again, this is your standard invoice breakdown plan and what is most commonly used by merchants. It allows you great flexibility in offering your clients very, very flexible payment terms to ensure that instead of not getting paid, you are getting paid at least something over time. And you can start to work with the client to ensure that they are paying you sufficient amounts so that you can either continue to render service to them, or you might agree with them that you don't continue to render service until the payment plan is paid off, right? Some merchants choose to configure payment plans for multiple invoices. We currently don't support this as a feature that would allow you to batch select multiple invoices and then bundle them into a plan. But some merchants will consult their accountant and may choose to round out or amalgamate multiple invoices into a singular invoice and then enroll the singular invoice into a payment plan. So let's go talk about the last feature that I wanted to cover on this. So that's the setting up the opt-in features. So what does that mean? All right. Now, upon setting up the opt-in features, what this will end up displaying to as the customer is if they get issued an invoice and they open the payment link from the invoice, be it Xero, QuickBooks, or MyOb, they will be presented with their standard Pay Now page, which we've covered in another video called Pay Now. You'll see here down the bottom, we have these options for installments. These are 3 payment plans that have been configured to have the opt-in feature enabled so that your client can either choose to pay the invoice in full now, or they can choose to pay the invoice off over time with one of these installment plans. In this case here, you can see I configured one of the 25% deposit plans to be available, which will just debit them for 25% of the value, or they can choose the pay in 4 option, which will break down the invoice into 4 payments every month, or the pay in 8 weekly payments option. In this case, I'm going to select the pay in 4 monthly payment plan. So all I need to do is hit the select plan, and that's going to take me through the payment plan enrollment page. This is the same page that your client will be directed to if you email invited them to the subscription breakdown plan. And all that your customer needs to do is input a payment method and confirm the subscription. And this will activate the subscription. This feature is without a doubt, I would probably say the second most powerful feature across the entire Pinch system. This feature is a cornerstone of resolving late payment issues with problematic customers or consistently late paying customers, because you can offer them more flexible terms that suit their needs whilst also injecting and continuing to inject passive cash flow into your organization without causing a rupture in the customer experience. So I really highly recommend using this page. To configure a payment plan with this enrollable option, all you need to do is on your payment plan, head into your payment plan when you're building it, or retroactively, you can turn this feature on or off for certain payment plans by going in and hitting edit. And down the bottom here, it's this feature here. All you need to do is check the checkbox and hit save if you want to show every invoice this payment plan, or every client who's looking at an invoice the payment plan. Alternatively, there are 2 configuration options. So you can either specify an amount, meaning you only show invoices over a certain dollar amount, amount. So in this case here, for this invoice, if I configure that payment plan, it wouldn't show for this invoice because I set a $5,000 threshold, which this invoice is less than, which is why it's not going to show here. However, you can also specify template. So if you're a Xero user and you're using invoice templates, you can also choose to only show this to a certain type of invoice, so that if you're rendering services to a specific client group,